How's it going, everyone? We've got another guest with us. Our guest today is Armilus Ben-Belial. How's it going?
Hey, doing great. How are you, Corbin?
Fantastic. It's been a minute since we spoke. We keep in contact through various means outside of video chat, but it's been a while since we spoke like this. What's new? What has changed for you in the last year, as you reflect and you look back towards last December? What's changed for you?
So a lot. Um, so first off, I've been doing a ton of study on all sorts of different, specifically local herbs that just grow naturally around my local area. um, I found that like getting really involved in local witchcraft traditions in general that are in harmony with the land as it is right now is a really beneficial thing to the craft. And I really have gotten into different herbs. Specifically, I'm gonna throw a few out there because I found that there is a specific diet of five that that I found are specifically excellent for many reasons. Some of them have extreme anti-cancer benefits, anti-diabetes benefits. No joke. This stuff is insane. Like I get all my information on this sort of stuff from like uh, the National Institute of Health, PubMed articles, stuff like that. I go extremely in depth down to like breaking it down to like the different chemicals, um, looking into like what they do and stuff. But yeah, these five different things that I found are extremely important are self heal, otherwise known as Prunella vulgaris, and in Chinese medicine was known as Jia Ku Kao. I think it's how it's pronounced. XIAC, well, no, KUCAO, Jakuko, or Jakuko. I don't know how that's pronounced. Sorry if I mispronounced it. Um, and so the next one is Lichen. You definitely wouldn't want to eat the yellow ones. But aside from that, those are spectacular for you. They're also called the one that, at least the ones that grow a lot in my area are I would say are Kalpasi. Definitely look into that. That one, the lichens in general. There's a bunch of different types, as you could guess. And they're
And
all
sorry to interrupt. Is there a place where you've like posted a list of these, or like is
nope.
maybe we can get together after this and I'll get this list from you and then I can put it in the description of the video. Because
That would work.
I'm sure others other than myself are interested in these as well.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, that is a very good idea. I definitely will be posting this, and that would be, yeah, that'll also be perfect. But yeah,
Okay.
uh, then there's at Dandelion. I'm sure you don't. Nobody even needs an introduction on that one.
Hmm.
um, uh, then Plantago, Plantago Major, and Plantago Lanceolata. That stuff is incredible. Actually, a friend of mine got bit by his dog, and I found out that Plantago Major is really good at accelerating wound healing, as is the the Prunella vulgaris. So I took the two of them, chewed them up in my mouth, spit it into my hand, and it sounds disgusting, but
You made like a salve or a poultice,
yep,
sort of. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
exactly. We rubbed it where he had gotten bit, and we waited. Um, well, I didn't. We intentionally didn't apply it to the other part of the wound just to see
Sure.
if like a side by side.
Like
And
a control and variable, yeah.
Exactly. And lo and behold, after just a couple of days, like it looked like, even though it was the most gnarly wound, was the one that we put it on, now was the least severe wound. And like before that, like a part of his knuckle was like coming out a little bit. It was nasty looking. But it was nuts, and he didn't even like wash it off afterwards. He literally just left it on. He's like, man, it worked like stitches. Imagine that.
I'm sure he's very grateful that you had the foreknowledge to be able to assist him with that.
Yeah, for real. His dad was impressed. But yeah, then the last one would be any coniferous tree, like, you know, arborvitae, white pine, blue spruce, eastern hemlock. Not hemlock like what Socrates was executed on.
Right.
That's almost identical to wild carrot and cow parsley. It's just, you know, that one's smooth and not hairy or furry. But yeah, you wouldn't use that. But no, the eastern hemlock tree. Yeah, those a bunch. Really, any of that is great. Definitely not the yew bush, YEW, the Taxus. I don't know if it was like Taxus baccata or something like that. But that, yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to eat that. The only thing you would want from that is, and I've eaten this before, the red berry that's on it, not the seed. But other than that, that's, you know, I was always told the red berry was toxic, but it actually isn't. It's actually, the toxic part is everything else of the plant.
Yeah, it's funny how that works sometimes. Like sometimes only the seed will be edible. The flesh around the seed, toxic, but the seed itself is edible. Or sometimes the whole plant is poisonous except for the roots. And it's only in the autumn that the roots are edible, or something like that. So there's so many lookalikes too with fungus, like any kind of flora, really. There's a lot of lookalikes that we have to be careful with.
That is a fact. Like I found that some wild parsley that was growing this year, and you know, crazy. Well, no, not parsley, parsnip. That's important detail. Yeah, and I found out I didn't touch it ultimately because, you know, I just decided not to. But also I found that touching it actually has some sort of photoreactive sap that like causes chemical burns if it comes into contact with light. So I'm like, yeah, I'm good on that. I mean, it's great to boil it, but you know, like just to break something off and have a snack, that would not be cash money.
Yeah. I have long had an interest in stones and herbs from a medical and geological standpoint.
That's
but
badass.
Coming into a more spiritual perspective of things, wondering what makes the rock grow the way that it does, what gives the rock its color, why does iron turn things orange and red. You can answer these questions with chemistry, but there's always something holding everything together that they're always going to be able to dissect again and always call something else. So yeah, and so I wanted to know more, and part of the reason that I even got into this path in the first place was alchemy. And so I've always been, maybe not always, but since probably the 3rd or 4th grade. But I mean, even as a child, I was playing in the mud and making different things. So I would love to discuss herbs and stuff like that as much as you would like to.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
So what other herbs have you experimented with on more than just a topical healing capacity? Have you used any like for like entheogenic and psychedelic purposes? Have you used any for like deep level of trance states?
Yes. So unfortunately, not psychedelic, but because of the stuff that grows in my area. But now I have used it for some very powerful dream work.
Sure.
Basically, there's a mix. There's the blend is if you get mugwort, yarrow, um, pineapple weed,
Hmm.
um, let me see, arborvitae, and the flowers and leaves of some wild carrot that
Mhm.
was all dried. That will cause some very extreme effects with the dreams because oh man, I literally I went and I went and winded down for the night first, got even turned the light off, cracked my window, sat down by the window, smoked a bowl of that. Well, most of the bowl rather.
Mhm.
Just went puff after puff. Very relaxing, and I noticed, I started to kind of feel a slight effect. Not really much at all in the waking state, but let me tell you, when I went to bed, it was wild. It was like
Uh-huh.
dreams that I had that night, bro, were were literally like it was like I was seeing like it was like psychedelic colors and geometries. Never have I had a dream like that before. And I
Mhm.
have used it since. So it's not like that every time, but it always does seem to both increase the vividness of the dreams as well as if you consecrate it specifically and thank each
Oh,
plant
absolutely. Oh
for
yeah,
the effects just become all the more excellent. So highly recommend that to all viewers. Well, assuming you're not.
absolutely. Yeah, and enter like in ingraining intention into the herbs is, or anything you're working with for that matter, is a huge piece of the puzzle for many.
It's a
I
fact.
Yeah, absolutely. So I haven't well, first of all, I think you mentioned pineapple weed. Is that what it was? I've
Yes,
never
not
heard of that.
pineapple weed is in like marijuana,
Sure,
but like
sure.
pineapple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is pineapple weed? I've never heard of that.
So basically it grows around at least where I live, you can usually find it like beside roads, in driveways, that sort of place where there's a lot of dirt and rocks.
Sounds like Mullen.
Oh, mullein is fantastic. Yeah. I there's some that grows right out front.
Mhm.
But yeah, it grows really well around that same sort of area.
Mhm.
Let me see if I actually have one there. Here, it's dry. It's very dry, and this was a very small specimen.
Okay.
But
Interesting. That
yeah.
almost looks like poppy or something from here, but yeah.
Hey.
So interesting. I will have to look into that. I have never, as far as I'm aware, smoked things like mugwort and uh, lucid dream inducing herbs. I typically will make a tea out of them just because I have a like an issue when I smoke things where I just like cough constantly. So if I were to like smoke something and then like lay down to like lucid dream, I would probably just be like keeping myself awake coughing.
Yeah,
Um,
right. You'd be
so
like,
I just the tea will have to work, I suppose. I mean, I have smoked like salvia and I have smoked cannabis, but those effects are they're much more apparent and immediate. So that's a little different. For if I'm gonna make like a lucid dream tea or something like that, like, or if I'm going to make something for that, it's usually like a tea or something.
Right. Yeah, you could definitely use it as a tea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Blue Lotus is really good as well. Nymphaeus Cerulean. I was just talking about that on another video. That's really good. The Egyptians used that. Probably cultures before them as well.
Right. I interrupt there for a second? Sure. That actually is something interesting. Years ago, there was a friend of mine who he was a friend of mine from college that I went to briefly. And basically he knew a chemist from Philadelphia that did, like different sorts of like made his own entheogens, like straight up. Mm-hmm. And he pulls out like this white powder, and I'm like, what's that? And he's like, I call it orange bliss. And I'm like, what? And he's like orange bliss. It has fermented orange peel and Egyptian blue lotus, and there was a few different things that I had, like some of them that I've heard of before, but most of them I didn't.
So was it like a moonshine?
What's that?
Was it like a moonshine or something where like he fermented?
No, things? Not even. Okay. It was like somehow they had turned it into a straight like powder. It looked almost like
okay. I see.
Yeah, it was. And he was like, you only want a little bump. So him and I snorted a little bump of it. And he was like, you got to smoke weed to really get the effects from this. And so then we went and smoked a fucking gravity bong. Fucking took like 4 hits of some sour D on the side of the hill.
Okay.
It was nuts. I can't even describe it. It felt like at one point like a cat was climbing up my throat, and it like jumped and it like bopped on the top and fell down into my stomach. It was some trippy ass shit. And then he lost his keys. I was able to find his keys, but he wasn't for some reason. It was a wild night. It was wild. It was my first time like with really having a ego dissolution experience. I could feel all the different. It was like all the different people in the building. It was like I could feel like in the energies of all like the rooms at the same time in his dorm. It was a wild experience. Like it was.
It sounds like it was
removed from the ice.
So I wonder. You said it felt like there was a cat that like jumped from your stomach up to your throat, like, and out your mouth.
That was the trippiest shit.
I wonder if that was the embodiment of like an energetic experience that you were having, perhaps?
Oh, yeah. Right? Yeah, I could definitely see that.
I don't know.
It was, but yeah, it was interesting. Right.
Okay. So what do you think about ancient cultures that have left us recipes rather, I guess they could be remedies as well, for things like astral projection and lucid dreaming and using herbs to induce things like that? What do you think that they just had a misunderstanding of what was happening in the dream state, or do you think that perhaps they were able to do more with that frame of mind and with that state, and that's why they revered herbs like the blue lotus and other herbs so heavily?
I definitely would think that they revered that, and I actually wonder how many times society has gone through, like even beyond like all of history as we know it. Like how many times has it gone through? Like, is this the first time the internet has existed? Like, for all we know, could have been wiped away by some event at some in the past. And you know, and now everybody had to just start from scratch, and now that all we know of is just yeah, well, there's, you know, there's this now.
Yeah, I could go on thinking about that for days. And the degree to which they would have had internet and how they would have interacted it. Now I'm thinking about like a civilization like Atlantis, or like maybe, I don't know, Mars or something.
Real.
But yeah, I think the ancients definitely had, they had a different kind of wisdom. They had a different kind of knowledge. I think now we're so obsessed with dissecting horizontally, dissecting on X, that we forget to think about Y. And when you forget about why, you know, the question mark, when you forget about the y-axis, it can be easy to forget about the z-axis, you know. And the thing that connects us, I think, is the y-axis. You know, above and below brings back and forth, you know, together as well. So I think that they had knowledge of y and z to a different degree than we do these days.
Yeah, right. I think they had a lot more a-causal reasoning back then. They didn't constrain their thinking as like causally as people do in the
Sure.
modern.
Well, or as dualistically, and I think that is
Right.
perhaps related.
I would I was just literally just about to say that. Yes. Yup. Yup. For real.
Very interesting.
Just the other day, I had a realization. You know, like the fact of the fact that everything is a-causal. That really, it, you know, the implications of that are
Just
extreme. Like,
just for our audience, can you define what a-causal means to you and why you perceive everything to be a-causal, perhaps?
yes, okay. So, so first, to understand a-causal, it would be best to understand it's causal. So, causal, as you probably already know or have guessed, is the relationship between its cause and effect, sort of looking at the world in terms of events. But a-causality is more of more in line with the quantum sort of the things that scientists have found. Like, for example, the fact that the past influences the future equally as much as the future influences the past. Somehow they found quantum waves that was able to prove that. And the fact that they were able to find that, it really just shows it's an infinitely coalescing present moment that's always changing, expanding. So a-causal is not like, oh, that existence came into existence at the Big Bang and will go out of existence at the, you know, at the degenerate era or whatever, you know, rather instead it was a fluctuation in the quantum field that basically kind of like like the mouth of God, metaphorically speaking, speaking the universe into existence as a great series of quantum fluctuations, as a great chaotic I would say a rug, but that is far too thin, if you know what I mean.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
And so realizing that, and so realizing that a-causality is that the cause and effect are all one, and that it also entails that all are one. The fact that, you know, everything is mutually, like, from what I've found, everything's mutually coexistent. You know, if you can observe it, it's an aspect of your own consciousness, the great I am. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so essentially, what the thing that I realized the other day was if because all that I've seen is that reality operates very a-causally. So I'm thinking, if reality is a-causal, then that means that not only is every day kind of like, you know, like different spokes on a great wheel of your own individual, of like your own transcausal being,
Hmm.
basically, but also simultaneously, you know, it's almost like uh that like everything that a person does magically, because I've seen time after time again, it's affected reality in a completely acausal manner. So I think, okay, well, with that being the case, like all of reality is essentially like it is happening at the same time.
Hmm.
So like with that awareness, there's, as you probably already are aware, there's a lot that a person can do.
Hmm. Yeah, I sort of see in my mind's eye, it's much more complex than I can probably describe with words in a brief description, but in my mind's eye, when I think about the true universe, the one stanza of existence, I
Right?
I see this like this glass sphere where you could perceive it as past and middle and future, but that seems to be more like the 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 finiteness of our human perception being
Exactly.
like a wall of light, like piercing through that sphere second by second, but the
Exactly.
entirety of it already exists as a
Yes.
whole. Yeah. Well,
Precisely. It's only our observation that is what changes. It's just experiencing different areas of it as it goes.
and yeah, perhaps as soon as the beginning exists, the end already does. It's hard to make green when all you have is, brown and purple. If if
Yeah,
if
right.
if if
Straight up.
if blue and yellow aren't in the beginning, it's harder to end with green, I guess. So the beginning, in many ways, does potentially determine the end, and
Right.
that's so
I gotta tell
therefore
you,
happening all at once. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
quick note. I'm using this to prop up. It's some paints. But you said if blue and yellow are at
Sure,
the beginning, yeah,
sure.
blue and yellow are right there,
Right at the beginning.
right at the end.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah,
And I could
bro.
have
A
I could have
causal,
chosen
brother.
any two colors, right?
Yeah, right. Comparing a causality to colors, and the a causal compared it to colors right back.
That is so funny, man. Synchronicity or
Yeah, straight
serendipity.
up.
Awesome.
That
I
was
love
beast, dude.
I love
That's
thinking about the cosmos.
right. I love it, man. Couldn't get fucking cooler than this.
So, briefly before we move on, was there anything else that you wanted to mention about herbs and um, you studying and learning about your local flora and getting involved with it or anything like that?
Um, uh, Pine is excellent for all forms of meditation.
Mm.
Um, there's a there's there's a lot. I really, yeah, I that there is a lot. Um, yeah, yeah, I think that
Yeah, it makes sense that pine would be good for meditation. A lot of times we have pine trees in our yard, and a lot of times I'll go out and collect the resin and I'll use it for incense. They're
hey,
very strong. They're like ladders. Climbing a pine tree is, man,
oh, I love it.
it's an ascent into the clouds, into the heavens, so to speak. So, all right, then I guess we will move forward. You said that a lot had happened in the last year. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention about the last year before we move
Yeah,
forward? Okay.
yes. So first off, so there's a lot. Um, so first off, there was so okay. So brief trigger warning for the audience. But there was somebody that was that I thought was a friend that showed me they were not a true friend, if you know what I mean. And so yeah, long story short, I got the fuck out of there and cursed the living fuck out of that bastard. And yeah, I found out that shortly after I had laid my curse work, man, actually, he ended up having to be driven to the hospital by one of his work friends after he fucking overdosed. I believe it was some sort of combination, but I don't know, so I'm not gonna speculate. But yeah,
you told me that. I had forgotten. Yeah, so yeah, basically they were trying to force you into some form of contract or into doing something that you weren't comfortable with, and you told them that you weren't going to take part in that, and they insisted in a malevolent way. So
correct.
you responded essentially.
Yep. And as I was leaving, the asshole had the nerve to both threaten to kill me if I told anyone, and also then tried to bribe me with 38 bucks, which I also, this then ties in to the curse word. I fucking charged that $38 that he gave me.
Oh, you took the money? Okay.
Yep. Yep. I took it because I knew it would be a perfect link to it. So I took that money and I was doing a psionic experiment using my phone and the Notepads app and some other things I will not be getting into. But I ended up using the light on my phone as the carrier, and I just fucking for hours. I literally just sat it on, just charging it with all sorts of malevolent energies.
So you had something on your phone, presumably, being projected on the screen.
Well, yeah. So I used the Notepads app in a certain configuration to link it to the light on my phone itself.
Sure.
And I used that light to shine that like through it, using that as a direct link to his entire.
Sure.
Yep.
Now, was there any? Now, when I think about rituals and ceremonies, I tend to break things into like the elements. So you were using physical things. To me, that's like earth. And you had the money, that's earth. And there was some sort of imagery or symbolism, and that's like wind. Did you do any sort of visualizations, which I see as like water, or did you do like any energy work? It does sort of play into energy work and fire because the phone is an electrical thing, but did you do any visualizations or energy work along with that? Did you have any incantations or words of power?
Oh yes.
Okay.
I was using, so like I use a lot of different stuff that's like channeled from different aspects of my own being, and that really are able to help me pinpoint things and lock things in certain ways. So basically, when I was doing that, I also would be focusing on malevolent intent. I'm just completely visualizing him being completely destroyed, using my very anger as the fucking like a consuming fire around him, or visualizing whatever horrors it was I was projecting being beamed into his mind. I was using all sorts of different experimental techniques to fuck around with him here and there. It was a lot of fun. You know, you gotta love your enemies because, you know, and Jesus even said you gotta love your enemies because after all, you wouldn't want to target practice on your pals. You gotta have your enemies.
Very interesting. Yeah, and you bring about an entire you're raising a point, I'm trying to say, I suppose, about an entire culture of magicians that do baneful workings but tend to only do so when, you know, things are being imposed upon them, and or people who they are contracted to do these things on, who are like pedophiles and rapists, etc., etc.
Right.
So you and I know each other and have known each other for a couple years now, so I know that this isn't your first baneful working. Is there any other baneful workings that you wanted to get into, or is there any preferred methodology that you have that is common across all of those workings, perhaps?
Well, it really depends. I do like to switch it up, but I do all sorts of stuff with vampirism. Like, for example, before I even started hammering this guy, uh, siphoned the fuck out of him. And
That's a pretty
really,
common tactic, yeah.
what's that?
I said that's a pretty common tactic, but it's common because it works. It's a good idea. So
Yeah,
yeah,
right. Yeah, it was nuts. I did a lot of different things on him that made sure different aspects were completely disabled before I came in. Let's put it like
yeah,
that.
yeah. If
And
you're gonna like typically like before one even gets started on someone, there will be like bindings on them, and there will be banishings of their blessings and all kinds of things just to get the target unsettled first. And a lot of times they think that's the work. Um, like,
yeah,
oh,
right.
everything is going to shit, and it's like, nope, that's just your blessings going away. That's just the bindings starting. So yeah, then you mentioned you actually started the process of nailing or hammering, I guess, as you
Yep,
called it.
for real, for real. Yeah, there was all sorts of different things. I would do other out of body things where I would jump out and just straight up siege. I even oh yeah, here was a fun one. I straight up sabotaged the energies of his house with
How
energies with
okay, go ahead.
alcohol energies and a few others, but
I'm sorry,
very.
I interrupted you. You said you
Oh, sorry.
sabotaged his. No, no, I apologize. I interrupted you. You were mentioning that you sabotaged his house, the energies of his house. I was wondering if you could go more deeply into that.
Okay. So basically, also this was a psionic experiment that I had used, where really I found the Notes app on your phone that it comes with is a magician's best friend if you're wanting to get involved in different like psionic-y sort of stuff, especially since it's you're drawing with light, you know.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, but wait a minute, I lost my train of thought. What was the last thing that I
I
said?
was just you were saying that you were using your phone psionically to go about this work.
And sabotage his house with it. Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, basically, I did created a certain magical configuration that essentially would just keep filling his house with more and more algol energy, just like a containment hazard sort of deal. Um, and yeah, I just so put that in, just started focusing on not only like breaking down the energies that were there, but feeling like focusing as if I was experiencing what the building was experiencing per se, and just focusing
Okay.
feeling of those shadows coming in and getting him around, scaring him, visualizing all sorts of different things, implanting different thought patterns using similar methods. But yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, the man he pissed a lot of people off after that. But yeah, I one of my reasonings for cursing him was I wasn't his only, from what I had heard, I was not the only person that he has
Sure.
offended. And judging by his actions at a bar, where he went and slapped some girl's ass in front of his own girlfriend and in front of this girl's own boyfriend, he got rocked.
Hmm.
But it's like, you know, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You know, like
Sure.
consent is a nice thing.
Well, yeah, and my condolences. I mean, like first off, that something like that even happened in the first place, because that sucks. And
Right.
it's hard to even meet um people these days. So yeah, to
Yeah,
potentially lose a friend is no small thing.
for real. Yeah, we had hung out like numerous times before that. Like, yeah, yeah, he really surprised me on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
after
a lot of times predators like to use surprise as a weapon. So
yeah, right. Yeah, probably that's also why like beforehand he uh he like started by like over like being like overly complimentary at first, but then
mhm.
after that was like we were, because I you know, at least he said he was a magic user. He may be, but it doesn't it certainly didn't matter. Um but he like we were talking about things, and he mentioned weapons of mass destruction, and then next thing I know, he's like, so you've said you've done stuff with men before, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, come with me. And I'm like thinking, well, is he gonna like beat me? No, it was just something, you know, not quite all, you know, but you know, bad, not a good deal. But yeah,
Yeah.
fuck that guy. He's definitely having a fun time now. He no longer is employed at his job either. So that got sister snatched from him.
So you also had mentioned about going out of body. Is
Yes.
that is is that something you'd like to go further into? Maybe some techniques that you use personally? That's one of
Absolutely.
the things that I always love talking to you about, is you're so unapologetically original. And like you're always coming to me with like, hey, I tried this new recipe of herbs and it had this effect, or hey,
Right.
I did this type of working with this type of sigil and it had this kind of effect. And
Right.
that, like I said, one of the things that I love about talking to you, because so often when I talk to people, they're like, oh yeah, like what system are you using, or like what tradition are you coming from, or and it's so external, but you have this approach that registers and resonates with me very deeply, that is a very original approach to things. So yeah, I want to talk about your approach to out of body experience.
Hell yeah. Absolutely. So there's a long history. By the way, thank you for that, by the way.
Mm.
I really appreciate you, and I see like views like. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. But so basically my experiences with soul travel, so I've kind of compiled different methods over the years. So first off, when I initially learned soul travel, it was the brief time that I was in college. A really good friend of mine was a hereditary witch. He learned a lot of different things from his grandmother. He specialized in white magic. Super, super awesome guy. He had some extremely powerful wisdom that he was able
Mm.
to teach. And he taught me how his grandmother taught him how to soul travel, and that was so. You lay down, and now this isn't currently what I do, because evolved with some other things as well, but we'll get to
Sure.
that. So basically, you lay down, you make sure you take some good, deep, relaxing breaths into the deep diaphragm, and you want to be attentive of all the different feelings in your body, and you want to relax, and essentially, and it's been a while since I did this method, so I'm a little hazy on it, but you would essentially uh you 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 first like visualize your chakras, and then you start moving your arms and your legs without moving them physically, and feeling as though you are moving around. So you'll just be wiggling your arms and your legs all around while your physical body is completely still. And
Sure.
just get fully into that visualization and feeling from like a first person point of view. And you keep doing that until you feel even better. You know, you kind of rock a little bit, so
Yeah.
you start getting out and in and out and in. And like it's interesting because it's not even like like astral projection where you're fully, you know, out of body with no body awareness. The whole time during this experience, you're going to be half aware of your body. And so you start moving, and basically you roll over on your side, and you visualize and feel that you're rolled over on your side while you're actually not physically moved at all this whole time. And you visualize the room around you, you visualize and feel as if you are physically laying on your side, feel that gravity, and basically you just you either roll out or step up, but you have to wait till you feel a little vibration. You'll start to feel that
You get the shudder. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, it's well, at least for my experience, it was very subtle. And you just sit up and you completely just with your visualization, just visualize as if you are in the first person, going about your you know, going around in a physical area, or going and floating above, entering different sorts of areas. You can go through different astral gateways. We did an interesting experiment when he taught me how. So right when I got out of body, and I found for some reason, at least the first few times that I did it, I had to get out a few times before I was actually out. I would get out, go back and walk and lay back down in, and then roll around more, get out, and he was monitoring the energy to be able to feel where I was. And it was interesting because he at one point, while I was out of body, he projected his own consciousness into my body, and it caused this funny thing to happen where I basically got one of his memories and he got one of my memories. He was able to describe, I think it was my living room, but mine was the it was the woods from where a specific area where he used to hunt all the time. So it was neat. We got to have a memory switcheroo. And it was completely unintentional. So I don't know about how one would do that again. I'm sure there's a lot of way. I actually, you know, already like thinking about it, my mind is already coming up with a few ideas, but
Sure.
but yeah, you know, it was very interesting. That was how I learned with that. Then at the end, you always want to, you know, grab something real hard, you know, like a stress ball or something. You want to squeeze that real tight and tense your physical muscles and really just get
Ground. Yeah.
feel right back in, you know, get nice and grounded in this present moment and all that physical sensations. And yeah, that was how I initially learned it. And but then I ran across later E.A. Coetting's Mastering Soul Travel course. Very good course. and basically, yeah, that taught numerous different approaches at it. That I then, after experimenting with those methods for a while, I decided to, well, after a while, I started having to, because I was going through a really difficult part in my life where I kind of had to step away to a degree, to be able to rebalance my mind at the time. So I was like, I don't want to be like going anywhere astrally if I'm going to be possibly gonna, I was worried I'd like lose control of myself or something. And I was like, okay, I, don't want to have something weird happen. So I didn't for a while, and then I was like, as I've been getting in, like initiating through the Qliphoth, I've realized that really, direct. I mean, yeah, like there's things I use. I still use, like when I'm doing a vision quest in like a Qliphothic vision quest through like a tunnel, for example, or a sphere. I'll use a method that is pretty much just the same, a similar method to what my friend's grandmother taught him. That just sent that I also use the other things that I've picked up over time. And when you're projecting, you definitely, you probably are already aware of this, I'm sure, but you want to make sure that your awareness is on wherever you're wanting to be. You're not, if what you're not wanting to be pops into your mind, you don't want to be focusing on that. You want to make sure that you're focusing on where you're wanting to be, because energy travels where the thought flows. But yeah, so like when I'm doing a Qliphothic vision quest, I'll use that method. But also when I'm laying siege on someone, if I'm, for example, like with him, there was only one time that I ended up going, like out of body while laying down. And that one was extreme. But that I'll be getting into that because that ties into a different thing that I'm wanting to get into, some fasting. But that I'll in a moment. But basically, so like the majority of the time with him, I would be just focusing in the first person, just as if I was, as if I was projecting while laying down, just while I'm going about my day with my physical body instead. So allowing my going out in my own astral body while I'm still doing whatever in the physical, or I might even like combine the two, because there would be different times where I would visualize like either him standing in front of me in my house, or him or me being in his house and visualizing intensely while throwing some punches into the air, while visualizing and feeling as though I was actually physically connecting
and sending that energy, no doubt, that way.
Exactly. And really just getting into that, and also doing different things, like all sorts of different strange types of attacks that I did on him, like for example, there was one where yeah, the one I'll talk about is it was so the one was I went and visualized just straight ripping his fucking heart out, and visualizing, feeling, and tasting as if I was eating his heart like a fucking apple. And then going and you know, there was another one where I used my black flame using a certain technique that's private to me. But the one with the black flame, so how that one was where I was laying down, where I laid siege that way. But basically, in that particular instance, it was after I did. I mentioned to you off camera earlier about that I've done a couple of fasts
Mm-hmm.
since then. So the first fast that I did was basically it was down in the woods. It was, I think, in like March, I think it was. It was no, maybe it was April. It was one or the other. And basically, I went down to this beautiful place in the woods. There was this stream where it parted, and there in the middle of the stream there was a little island that was just big enough to have a tent there. So I was like, I'm gonna do a visions quest where, you know, like Native American style visions quest, where I'm gonna just only stay in this one spot for I settled on 5 days and no food, and you know, since there's water there, be having the water. I didn't bring any defense. I was like, you know, the divines got me. I don't have to worry about anything, and if I do get eaten, it's because I deserve it or should be eaten for some celestial reason. And needless to say, I didn't die. So, as my sister said, I didn't die, so I'm okay. and but man, it was an amazing experience. I literally sat there watching the stream, and I zoned out into it and got into such a deep trance that it like became like television static, and it was wild. Later that one of the nights, I came out of the tent, and it was beautiful evening. That cold as fuck. But yeah, I noticed for whatever reason the the ground and all the trees looked like they were static over them, just like that. So I was, because I meditated the majority of the time that I was down there, so I was assuming I probably was still in the trance, or at least in some form of a trance.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah, I learned so much by just spending that time completely alone, no devices at all, to not even to have not even to have the electrical influence at all around me.
Mm-hmm.
It was fantastic. I learned a lot about myself and like different techniques. One technique that I'm able to talk about, that I'm being led to discuss here, is, so every part of your body is a god in and of itself. Your heart is a deity. Your lungs are a
Sure.
deity. Your very skin is a deity. All these different aspects. Now, as you probably are already aware, whenever you know, people will a lot of the time have tightness in their chest, you know, or like people will be anxious about something that's going on, or you know, or something maybe that was caught up in the past, and you have different and basically, you know how your muscle memory traps um experiences and traps the
Uh-huh.
energy there.
Sure.
So yeah, so I when I was in the woods, the spirits showed me that you can actually project into yourself and project your awareness into different your different organs, like kind of like different astral dimensions in and of
Mm-hmm.
themselves. And you can go into that, and you might see things like stuck in there. You can remove that and heal different things. Even without doing that, a really simple method that a person could do is like just if a person say, if a person's, tensing their chest a lot and been feeling a tension there. So number one, first you would want to just sit, kind of just relax into it. Allow yourself to just feel that feeling. And instead of crumpling away from it, feel into it and allow it to assimilate. And observing it directly, then say a prayer to that specific area of your body, or that musculature, or the particular organs in that zone, and you ask them, to please release what it is that is trapped and hung up here, and please reveal it to my awareness, and help me to be able to metabolize it and be able to get this energy moving again, and get some healing. And you then meditate on that feeling, and oftentimes some different random stuff might start to show up. It might be something very direct, but you definitely want to keep following, the threads that it gives you, because you might have to look at things in a more esoteric sort of perspective, to be able to really get to what it's actually showing you, kind of reading your the visions that come up, kind of like reading a dream almost.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right.
So you've raised a few points here. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit.
Please do. We don't want to miss these.
Yeah. Right. That's one reason I have to keep track, because like I often describe my. Okay, so I'm gonna go on a slight tangent here. There's this thing called the magic number, and it's 7 plus or minus 2. And that is the average number that the typical human can focus on. And so like I call that, before I learned about the magic number, I called it my bookshelf, because I noticed as I would put another thing on, like it would knock another thing out. So I always have to keep like a notepad when I'm doing these to make sure that I don't miss those poignant points. One of those was how sometimes we see things in first person versus third person whenever we're having visions. And I also wanted to mention how that was a great technique. That was a great exercise that you shared with us about sort of wriggling around energetically in the body. And yeah, the exercise of grounding that you shared was really good. I often like to go for a walk. But if I can't go for a walk, a lot of times tensing up, I do this like this elbow squeeze on my ribs. And it's like I like tense up my body, and like that is really grounding as well. Like I take a deep inhale. I take a deep inhale really slowly while I squeeze my rib cage, and I tighten up my legs and stuff. And it's just really grounding. Yeah. It's very grounding. And the other thing that you mentioned was, while you were on this vision quest, you didn't have any electronics with you. And from personal experience, when I go on something like an Utasita or a vision quest pretty regularly, I used to do it every quarter. Like I used to do it every season for 3 days. But now it gets to be where I will just sit in this study and we'll just shut the door and I'll just stand here. And one thing that I notice is the direct impact. As soon as I come out of my isolation, the first thing I notice is the impact that electronics have on me, on myself, my being, not just my physicality. Because when I go like 3 days or so without touching my phone, and I pick my phone up to talk to people, I notice my hand is almost numb, like it's tingly. And so that's a physical impact. It affects my energy body. I notice that I can move my energy around, and it's much more stable when I don't have my phone in my sphere. And I've noticed that my attention span is better. I noticed that my visualization is better because I'm not staring at that light. So my pineal gland is seemingly making DMT more easily. So
Right.
yeah, you raised a lot of points just in passing there that I wanted to re-emphasize because they're good points.
Thank you. Hell yeah.
So you also had mentioned your Qliphoth initiation. Is that something
Yes.
that you would like to talk about?
Let's see. So right now I am working in the Kala of Ananine. Awesome experience.
Sure.
Uh Let me think. Yeah, it has brought up a lot of stuff, like the different trials that it engenders are very interesting.
Sure. Well, that's Samael and Thagirion. So that is very, very trial oriented. And yeah, Oananine is a very interesting path. Obviously, it relates to the devil and it relates to the eye, but also the void.
Right?
Yeah. Oyen, of course. So yeah. So yeah, tell us how are you
about that?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually watched a video that you made about
okay.
that. It was spectacular. Like, I had thought in the past about making videos specifically, like reading the different, going into the different books about it. Man, brilliant.
It seems like the right thing to do because that's how I approach all of this. I step up to the plate with my own perspective and I say, what the hell does this mean? And I'll meditate on it. And then I will reach out and sort of grab a bunch of things and I will put them together and see what's related between them. And then I'll extract that or extrude that, however you want to think about it. I extract that out of there and then I put it into the pool of my own, perspective, so to speak.
Right.
So that's what I wanted to do for those videos. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I'm glad it was helpful.
It was very impressive. Yeah. Anybody who hasn't watched it, go watch it. What are you doing?
It was an amalgam of other people's work. So anything impressive about it, I give credit to. They say we stand on the shoulders of giants. I obviously didn't compile all of that information myself,
but
it resonated.
Place.
Yeah, that is very, very important. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do that is to put it all in one place. You
weren't just like one thing or another thing. You were you were putting it there coherently, getting it in a nice flow. Because I mean, there's 26 letters of the alphabet, but every word is formed differently.
Sure. Yeah, different formulas and formations.
Like letters. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that. So what are you and how are you going about this process of initiation? Is it a primarily psychological where you are just sort of mulling over the motifs in your mind, or is it more about ritual and ceremony? Are you creating artwork? All of the above? What is your Qliphoth? First of all, how long have you been going about this process of initiation for? And then how have you been going about it?
So it's been wow, probably this is probably I want to say the third year. I think it's the third year. I'm in the third year. It's been I like to take it real slow and steady. So I think it's been around 3 years that I've been.
I think the last video that we made, you said that you were in Amproteus.
Oh no! At the time, it was Urians.
Urians. You're right. It was Urians. But But
I remember time by initiations now.
it was, you're right, it was Urians, because it was, we were talking about the Hierophant and all of that. So what I'm getting at is that you are really taking your time with this,
Yeah.
because you've gone from the 6th letter to the 14th is Oyen. You've gone from Vav to Oyen in a year. So a lot of people would have already tried to blow through this already. And that's another thing that I really appreciate about your camaraderie is you're consistent and you don't mind taking your time with things. And I love that approach.
For real. Yeah, thank you. That's one of the most critical aspects of it is balance, because I know how, like, if one initiation is nutty, you know, it would probably be too much for most people to chew to have be hit with all that at once. And I mean, I want to get the maximum amount that I possibly can out of this.
Sure.
And really, it's interesting because, like, getting to watch how these initiatory forces like play out in a very, like, pure, unadulterated way, where you're just observing that one energy over like a longer span of time. Because to be honest, when I initially like was thinking about the Qliphoth before I even started initiation, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm gonna initiate through the spheres, and then I'm gonna just do a ritual to initiate through all 22, because VK Johannem did it. Maybe I'd like to see what that's about, even though he himself, I think, warned against it. And then as I'm initiating through the spheres, I'm like thinking, no, no. I'm going slow and steady the whole way.
I'm glad to hear that. I try to stress that without becoming dogmatic, that it's so important. All right. Well, before we move forward, I would like to take just the most brief intermission and refill my water, and then come back and continue this discussion, if that's all right with you.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, let's take a quick take a quick break, and then, yeah, we'll be right back. Okay, we are back from our intermission. So I needed some water, and I didn't want to cut our video short. So now we were discussing your Qliphothic initiation and how you are taking your time to get the most out of it. So is there any path along this process that you felt was more trying for you personally than any others, or has it all been pretty enlightening so far?
So I would say the one that was most difficult for me was Yamatu.
Okay.
That one in particular was difficult because at that time I was I really was not fully doing exactly as much as I should have been doing, because in that particular sphere, that particular tunnel, rather, it from at least my experience with it, it prefers the like cultivation, the inner cultivation, because that
well,
which
the
is
lantern of the hermit, right? That's exactly the lantern. The hermit has to keep the flame contained. It has to be
exactly. Like that was my reason for doing that that first fast that I did out in the woods. Basically, like it was just getting really intense, and I must have been definitely going the wrong way, because I was doing a lot of things just externally, and my life was just so it wasn't really it wasn't as keeping that cultivated, and it started becoming extremely depressing, extremely heavy energy. And I was like, okay, I need to make a change, and it needs to be a drastic one. And so I went down because I was starting to have like thoughts of suicide that started appearing. I was like, yeah, this is out of balance. We're changing this, drastic measures. It's like,
Sure.
oh, it's cold out. Well, who gives a shit? I'll put the rain fly on the top of the tent, because it wasn't even one of those tents that you could like unzip the screen. It was like the screen was there the whole time. It was breezy and cold. Like,
Yeah, I'm sure.
my nose, it was so cold. It was like 20 degrees was one of those nights that I was down there. I've never done something so intense, but that was the experience that really like led to the actual true cultivation of the energies that needed to be cultivated there, and it put the right things into the right place. And yeah, and who knows what sort of things that it's putting in the right place even now by me sharing the negative experience that I had and how I overcame that. Hopefully,
Right.
if somebody else is struggling with those energies,
Well, that's the thing about initiation is like, when I think about it, it's not always this way, but in a very grand initiation, it's like the act that you are performing during the initiation. That is a lot of times just the fuse burning.
Yeah, right. For real.
And then there's the explosion, which takes place outside of ritual and ceremony.
That's a fact.
But then we have to look at what happens when we have an explosion. Is there's an after effect. There's displacement. There is often a void. You know, that something happens. So initiation, a lot of times, sometimes it is, but a lot of times initiation isn't just like, oh, I did this thing and now it is so.
Yeah,
that fuse has to reach the explosive.
Right. It's kind of like kneading dough to the right consistency. You got to make sure that you're keeping at it. Or like, it takes many knocks on the chisel to make a marble sculpture. It's I found that like, yeah, that with the Qliphoth has shown me more than anything I've ever done in my life, how important it is for, like the regular like always cultivating a specific alchemy with a specific focus to be able to bring a specific transfiguration that'll be of a meaningful degree and something that's not going to just fade away.
That's such an important that is such an important point, is to create a substantial a change that is long lasting and not just ephemeral. That is because so often I see that. But at the same time, it's often important to avoid stasis. But yeah, that's a very, very important point. Thank you for making that.
Right, and you also bring up something very important there as well, avoiding stasis, because there is a balance. It's like, at least for me, when I start to feel like I'm becoming static, that's my indicator to start getting into that next Qabalah and keeping building on that. A lot, like I do a lot of like possession work with it. That is extremely beneficial. A lot of vision quests. I do a lot of dream work, as you probably already guessed. Like, dream work would be like so difficult because, like, when I was younger, I would be like, oh, I would, I'd like to be able to have a lucid dream, but if I'd want to have a lucid dream, no way I could sleep that night. So, yep, I was one of those sort of people. And I found, even though I don't really lucid dream that much, even to this day, I am able to still do dream work quite substantially. It's really just as simple as you know, say a strong prayer to whoever you're working with right before you go to bed, just as you're about to drift off, to open you for oniric alchemy and to come into your dream, or to pull you into their tunnel and to guide you along and help you be able to metabolize the experience that it brings up and teach you in a clear way that you'll be able to actually grasp. And you know, asking for things like that, I found oftentimes, if it's not completely apparent in the dream itself, you know, it'll be, you know, at least some sort of relevancy looking back, you know, once awake. Like just last night, I was doing some lunar well, not lunar, well, I guess you could call it lunar alchemy, dream magic. But well, some alchemy with the specific tunnel that I'm working with in particular. But yeah, it was a really nutty dream. Yeah, it was literally, I went and followed this guy down into some, it was almost like a sewer drain. It was very narrow and we had to be very crouched over, and it just went on and on and on and on. And then I woke up and I went to the bathroom and I went back to sleep. And then next thing in this part, I'm now in my house, but the lighting is like really weird. And then I saw this dog. It was like the color of a golden retriever, but it wasn't a golden retriever. It was a dog I've never seen before in real life. But it was hanging out in the hallway. And I basically, then I started feeling this malicious presence that had appeared. And so I just started using, in my dream, it was one of the few times I've started using like incantations that I use when I'm awake.
Love it. I love it when that happens. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, it is awesome. It was like I could, like at first I could feel like, you know, okay, there's not much happening. Okay, this is scary. And then I was like, wait a minute, I just got to focus on what I'm doing. And I kept focused on being the most powerful in the room and exuding that protection. And then I could start feeling my being like fortify, like the very field of the house in my dream completely cleared out from everything. And then by the end of that dream, I was grinning ear to ear. And I was like, you know what? I'm so thankful to my shadow for showing me these things. I'm going to do some shadow integration. So right there in my dream, I was there saying chants integrating my shadow. It was
That's excellent. That's excellent. I highly recommend people work toward that type of magic and science as well. You mentioned oniric alchemy, which is interesting because that's almost like a pseudonym for what someone else, I was speaking to someone else a few days ago, Nico, who we were having a discussion on the channel as well, and he was talking about dream yoga.
Oh,
which is essentially like a sobriquet or a pseudonym, or it's a synonym. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a synonym for an oniric alchemy, and dream yoga are very, very similar. And that is one of the most overlooked steps. People are so obsessed with what I call wishcraft and manifestation. Money, girlfriend, boyfriend, job, all of that, those are stepping stones. But you know, like if you get obsessed with your stepping stones, then you're staring at the ground and you're not looking where you're going most of the time. So one thing that I try to stress, especially after like people learn to focus their mind with meditation, and after people learn different breath patterns, and after people get into the process of shadow integration and shadow work, the next thing typically is, like after energy work and all of that stuff, is dream work, because And this gets back to what I was talking about, the ancient cultures who would talk a lot about astral projection and dream work. Like a lot of like one instance in the Book of the Dead, an alternate title was the Book of Going Forth by Day.
Yeah, right.
Or and that is essentially I mean, like that to me is a nod to astral projection and lucid dreaming. So this is
Right.
really where a lot of the more impactful work comes into play, is when you are standing at the very boundary of your consciousness or consciousnesses, and you can interact with them right then, right there. It is a totally different experience, and once you experience it, you will look at day-to-day life differently. I can almost guarantee you.
Straight up. Straight up.
Yeah. So what you mentioned possession being one of your go-tos for work as well. What are some of the major entities or currents that you have invoked or become possessed by?
So I like whenever I'm working with, just in general, like with even before my Qliphothic initiations, I started with working with a few like Lucifuge Rofocal was my first one. That was a very neat experience. But things have really I'm much more specific nowadays, because like at the time I didn't have an exact direction. I wasn't summoning him for any, you know, alchemical reason I was aware of at the time, at least. But now I look at, I'm doing my Qliphothic initiations, and just each of the different lords and ladies of the Qliphoth, I go and invoke them in a ceremony. That usually tells me I'm about around the middle of a tunnel when I'm doing the invocation ceremony. And I use the words invocation and possession interchangeably. I don't know if I don't, I don't think everybody does that, but
no, I don't think so typically. I think there's like, for me, any possession that I've experienced, which has, I mean, admittedly only been a handful of times, and only once ever unintentionally, was much more like their consciousness eclipsed mine, like, so to speak. Whereas an invocation is like I'm having a conversation, or I'm standing by watching from the side,
right,
as opposed to like the thing is making itself a part of me. I don't know.
right, because when I do possession, it can get wild. Like like you're there speaking in tongues, you're there, your body's moving in different angles, you're seeing different sorts of visions. At least the way I do it, I try to keep myself focused the whole time on visualizing, instead of my physical form standing there, the entity itself standing there, and I focus on that being's energy just getting stronger and stronger and getting more powerful with every movement. And I'll do that however many times for each one. But yeah, I've seen there is a definite spectrum, like what you mentioned about, with like there's, on the one end of the spectrum, you have, okay, the very simple experience of of like two consciousnesses, like having a conversation per se. But then on the other hand, you have that full, sort of almost like a brief ego death sort of experience.
Yeah.
That, like one that I had a few days ago was very, very, very intense. and I was like during it, it was like wild. It was the first time I was really, you know, just felt completely like I don't know how to describe it. It was a different sort of experience than I'm used to. It was very intense. It was definitely a deeper level. But then again, that was also while I've been I fasted for my second time, and I finished that just a couple days back. Um, and yeah, it was during that fast. So also, if to be do possession while fasting, that is powerful as fuck. And yeah, you will like through this.
Very interesting. Okay. Let's see. Another thing that we discussed briefly was the power of etymology. So I wanted to talk about words in regard to possession and your experience as well, or invocation, if you prefer. You said that there is a type of visualization that is occurring. You said that there is energy work that is occurring. Are there certain postures or mudras or gestures or asana? Are there certain color candles? Is there a kind of music that you like to listen to? And is there like a certain mantra that you sort of go to?
So well, basically, there are a few different things. So uh, yeah, like during the actual experience, the my body can go in all sorts of different ways. Sometimes I'm just, it's very simple and I'm standing and it's, speaking through my mouth, or it could be much more intense where I'm kind of bending around, or even utilizing masturbatory practices as well too. But that's a lot more rare, but not quite as common. It really just depends on how it's going on. But the main keys that I always go by almost every time is you put your hands in a triangle, you put them over your head, not like that, because I'm not wanting to trigger those things in my mind
Sure.
right now, so I'm not going to do the exact things. But you put your hands in the triangle shape like this, but above your head. You then intone the entity's names one or many times while you're gazing at their sigil, and or I would recommend and for this, gazing at it while also visualizing it on your chest. Or you could also, if you're so led, visualize it on each of your chakras. And as you vibrate each name, you're going to the next one. And yeah, that really is a powerful one. You visualize it just as you vibrate each name. You visualize yourself completely vibrating with that frequency, and then you call on the spirit to go into your vessel of flesh to unite with you temporarily and eternally, and have inner communion, and ask them for like alchemy, and for them to help further your path along, and different upgrades. Even sometimes I've been led to be more specific with them than others. It really depends. Sometimes I've had certain invocations where I've been led to light a candle. Could be a black
Sure.
candle, could be a white candle. I do have other candles around. I just don't often uh, uh, use different colored candles. I do sometimes. It really just depends.
Do you have a favorite kind of incense?
I like dragon's blood.
I do too.
Hell yeah.
I like
What's
myrrh. My favorite incense probably is either, so my favorite is probably myrrh, but
Oh, that's
lately lately I've been, so I typically go back and forth between myrrh and dragon's blood. Myrrh is typically very calm and meditative for me, and dragon's blood is usually very energizing and activating. But I've been experimenting lately with this combination of amber and sandalwood, and that has had this really interesting effect. So yeah, I guess I wanted to share that. But yeah, so you like dragon's blood a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna need to remember that amber and sandalwood. I believe I think I have. I know. I'm almost certain I have a amber around here, but I know I've done a few sandalwoods, and I don't know if that is currently out or not. But I'm gonna be looking
Another
into
cool thing about
that.
those two is they bring like the solar and lunar aspects together, because amber to me like corresponds to like solar energy, and sandalwood to me represents lunar energy. So it has a very calming and focusing effect simultaneously. Yeah.
That's beast. Hell yeah, I'm gonna have to give that a try.
Yeah, you should. It's good stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, so dragon's blood, you said. So now are you burning incense while you're doing these invocations and possessions?
Sometimes. It really just depends on what I'm led. Sometimes I do a full ceremony where I do lengthy banishing opening ceremony and all this stuff. But other times I'll literally just go into the room and just start. There's been times I've been led to, have like there was one possession ritual I did when I was working for the census, and they had me out in Scranton at some hotel. They had I was there, and there was a certain ritual that I was led to do that involved like several black candles all in a circle around me, and I had to be naked for it. Like other times it's other very specific things like that, like, oh, this for this ritual you must use patchouli leaf incense, and it's like,
Mhm.
well, I don't know why you're asking for it, but I'm sure there's a reason. So this is what we're doing.
Very interesting. Yeah, for me personally, I don't drink often, but I've noticed that when I'm drunk, like when I'm that kind of drunk, where I've almost got the gigs, I'm just sort of like I'm almost like rocking back and forth, and I've got that warm smile on my face. That is like, if I can approximate that sober, that is almost the perfect position for possession. um, for me personally.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely found that alcohol is beneficial with possession as well. But I've also noticed that there is a bit of, at least for me, there's a bit of a downside with it, where it'll cause like weird mental disruptions.
That is something I've noticed as well. But I think that might have to do with like the type of alcohol, because like
Ooh,
this
yeah,
might be a myth and it might be placebo, but for a lot of people, the type of alcohol that they drink affects the type of drunk that they get.
yeah, right.
And I tend to prefer tequila. So I don't know if maybe like I think most people prefer whiskey. And that might have something to do with that. But yeah, I something about tequila, especially back in the day, especially like silver Patron tequila. I noticed like any, like I think like any of the possessions and like severe invocations that I did while I was drunk, which was I think was over half of them, which is something to consider. Um, it was just much more clear. It was like opening a door as opposed to like walking upstairs. It was
Right.
like, here I am, there they are. Come on stage. Come on out, you know?
Right. makes me wonder if that might be, if that was a property of the alcohol itself, or the fact that it was made with agave, because
or my experience with trance and meditation, because
well,
maybe,
yeah, that too.
if I had had a greater experience in trance and meditation, perhaps I wouldn't have needed the alcohol. But perhaps because of my experience level, I was able to facilitate. It's like I said, it's hard to say how much is
It's
because
all
of the type
connected. It's so complex, man.
It is. It is. Yeah.
Like, people don't realize how like many factors go into just something as seemingly simple as, you know, just one single action. You know, there's so much that, you know, happens around that, you know, it makes it makes things makes science not quite as easy.
Yeah, well, and it's like, this is kind of a nod to what you were saying earlier about each part of your body is a different god. That's true in the same capacity of each plant. So
Yes.
like when you have whiskey, that's one god. That's
Right.
one god's blood or sweat or tears, as opposed to another. Another interesting thing that I have noticed, and this is something that I don't know if I'll say I learned it, but this is something that I was led to think about while I was doing a possession one time. Because and to be honest, I don't even think it matters if I mention who the entity was. It's more the concept behind what they were showing me. I was going back and forth in my mind between myself and them, and whether or not it was an actual entity or whether it was an aspect of myself that was being highlighted momentarily, I'm not sure. But what I was witnessing, and I feel like I was intentionally being shown the difference between human consciousness and infernal consciousness. And as soon as I became aware of the relationship between human and infernal consciousness, I immediately started thinking about the relationship between human and celestial consciousness. And in my mind's eye, it all made sense to me. And I don't know if I've ever talked about this with anyone or on the channel before, but it all made sense to me because I understood things as not as inferior or superior anymore. It was all relative. And in my mind's eye, I remember now, I saw a vision of like the cosmos's birth. And I saw the plasma. And then I saw the plasma cooling into igneous material.
Right.
And I was like, whoa. Oh, okay, whoa, okay, I get it. And at least for me, it made sense that our consciousness is different, almost in the same degree that minerals are different between igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary.
Yeah,
and
right.
then I realized that like the animal consciousness is sedimentary to a degree. Right. And that the infernal consciousness is igneous to a large degree. And that the celestial consciousness is metamorphic. It comes from something older. And that's what the infernals teach us a lot of times, is that they were first. Right. And so I witnessed the infernal energy becoming celestial and then animalistic. And it was that's like just like blew my mind. And I'm getting chills now even thinking about it, because I've never heard anyone else really talk about the difference in consciousness as igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary. And when I go for a walk, like outside in the world, and I think about things that way, it just continually rends veil after veil in more ways than one. I didn't know how you experienced that, if that resonated with you.
I definitely need to
Seems
have
like
to
it
keep
does, yeah.
contemplating. Yeah, I feel that.
But that was shared to me, or that was experienced during a moment of deep invocation and or possession, because I was just like cycling back and forth in this oscillating moment. Because to me, when I want to understand the difference between two things, I compare and contrast them rapidly. So
Right.
like I don't know if I'm epileptic. My sister is, and my half sister is as well. I don't know if I am too, but like sometimes I feel like I can shift modes like rapidly. And that's what I was doing in that moment, was going back and forth between mine and their consciousness. And it was just like, and then I had that vision of the bang and the plasma becoming igneous material. And seeing that, it was like written on my soul instantaneously. Like I knew what that was supposed to mean to me. Whether or not it's true, I'm not sure, but holy shit, it resonated with me, and it gave me food for thought.
Right. For real. I love it how, like the spirits will point out different things to us in our own specific way to be able to, like, give that really unique insight that just you won't find from anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like a textbook or something.
Yeah,
So
right.
is there anything, looking back over the last year, is there anything that has stayed the same that seems fundamental? Something that, looking back over the last year, that you have continually done that you would not change, that you want to continue doing?
Yeah. So obviously meditating a lot because meditation is bay. um uh basically yeah, from where I was a year ago, yeah, I was doing those invocations. I was doing uh various the vision quests with the each appropriate sphere, well, and tunnel. um Basically, I've I've been only developing on my on the personal craft. Man, the majority of everything that I have in, like I'm looking around my room and I'm like, I wish I could show it, but a lot of it is completely private material.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
so a lot of the personal craft has really been getting a lot stronger. There's a lot more uh just countless developments that have been occurring with that. So really keeping with that. I found that really like a lot of prayer, because being as always doing what, always going and doing something. You might have a feeling of, oh, I want to do a ritual for this, right now. And then you're like, okay, well, I want to do a ritual for it. So I'm going to like write it down in my notes or something. Later comes along, and then you might not even have the inspiration for it anymore.
Sure.
And it's like, to avoid that, I've found it's always best to, you get the inspiration, just pray about it right then and there, because the way that I go about praying, I've had my prayers themselves upgraded through specific alchemy to that specific aspect of my craft. So specifically, prayer in general becomes even more powerful. It's like it's an impromptu ritual, basically, and merely acknowledging the four elements, within you and around you, and
Mhm.
yourself as that eternal center of reality while you're saying the prayer. It allows you to do everything, because essentially you're recognizing, hey, I'm the altar, I'm the
Right.
instruments. These, when and taken that, and it's my approach has gotten very impromptu anymore. But like I have found that, like, you know, for how my patterns are, that I best fit in with it, because I've tried doing like longer rituals, you know, a lot of the time, and I find that that is not feasible for me to, you know,
Yeah.
get into a habit of. And then I get ashamed of myself. I'm like, ah, man, I haven't been doing these rituals like I need to be doing. And then I'm like, oh, you know, kind of feeling stuck. And then it's like I realize, well, wait a minute, you know, why jump through all these hoops? Because when with this magic we're talking about here, time to optimize it for my needs.
Yeah, you gotta mix.
What's that?
I was just gonna say, you gotta mix the intention with the inspiration.
Right. I don't know. Well, I don't know who said it, but somebody one time said, the true black magician is not compelled by their reality. Instead, they compel reality.
That sounds like Carlson. That sounds like Carlson. But yeah, I mean, that is one of the perspectives that comes with the, you know, more, I guess, draconian or infernal approach to things.
Yeah, right. Right. I found it extremely beneficial taking that route, because like as I keep like something else that ties directly into this, you know, I smoke a good amount of pot.
Okay.
You know, so I go through periods where I don't smoke, and other times where I smoke overly excessively. But essentially, you know, for a long time, I felt like it was completely, you know, kind of holding me back in a way, because, you know, it's like I'd get high and not feel like doing, you know, whatever, because it's like I'm high. You know, delusions are more prone to happen if you're high, but also it can amplify as well at the same time. So, and then you have to wonder, well, which was it? And you know, so I've found that something that can help working the different alchemies is because a bong, I'm a bong sort of guy, but important detail. So this is for all my bong smokers. So basically, you have you know, you have the earth, which is, you know, the plant itself, the you know, the actual base of
The
the bone.
device. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. You know, then you have the air, because it's an air instrument. So there's, you know, you're pulling the air. The smoke is the air. You know, and the chamber. So then you got water. There's water in the bong. That's self-explanatory. Bonus points if it's offered water, because that can also. And I found also there's different types of nature spirits, like the enriched water that comes after using that. So dumping it on the grass and
Sure.
offering that. That's very, very powerful. But basically, the you know, and then the fire is both the literal spark as well as the inspiration as well. So using that and kind of using it as a you know, just as a really quick thing to open a gate and to help transfigure your consciousness through
Absolutely.
consciousness changing thing as a carrier. Yeah.
Well, and even approaching the flame as the fire, that almost, those four elements come together to reform the quintessence, the fifth element, spirit, which is also the inspiration, the perspective, the mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
All that harmonious.
Absolutely.
For real. For real. But yeah, like like that's essentially like sanctifying the, you know, things that, you know, were sources of impurity before, you're able to sanctify and turn them into sources of additional purity. It's like,
Yes.
now you don't have to choose between, well, do I want to say a prayer or, do a ritual or something, or, or smoke. I mean, yes, I will still separate that, in their proper times, but
Yeah.
that's how I've found, it's a good way to, it's like just one more open opportunity. Because then also thinking about it, there's two gateways being used there. There's the gate of way of fire and the gateway of water that are being used. And also there's I don't know if you I bet you know about it, but I don't know. But basically you probably know about how like light how light, when it's being observed, picks a spot, but when it's not being observed, it remains as the quantum.
You're talking about the nature of it to transition between wave and particle?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's a concept in itself.
Yes. So essentially, that's another aspect that you can think of in the bong, because the water that you're using isn't just water like as an outer gate, because you have the fire here outside and you have the water there inside. So I found that in, when doing different things, you can use light, and by putting different things with that involve light in, a certain way, and, lighten objects in a certain way, and then putting it into a, something completely dark and enclosed, while you're then doing something over that, visualize whatever whatever your intent is inside of it. There's some wild stuff, and this is one of the most awesome aspects of having electric screens on our devices.
So you mentioned the nature of fire and water as being something like gates or portals. That is one of the mysterious and powerful things about blood. Blood is essentially,
I was thinking about it. I was like,
fire
well,
and water. Yeah, blood is basically a mixture of fire and water.
Exactly.
And so yeah, I was sort of thinking that as well while you were talking about that, or not thinking it, but thinking about how that is true. That's something I've used in my practice for quite some time.
Badass.
So yeah, and it's, I mean, drugs are, and psychedelic substances are, it's nothing new for shamans and druids and magicians to use, mind altering substances, so to speak. So yeah, there's always been a place for that on this channel. It's never been something that I've wanted to focus on, because like as a focal point, because there are people who are completely sober and always have been, that have greater mystical experiences than I ever have. And I don't want people to think that the drugs are necessary.
Exactly.
It's just, for me, drugs are, they show me what was possible, and then I would use it until I could understand it enough to achieve that state myself. Yeah, but yeah, I've been talking about mind altering substances on this channel, I think since my first like Q&A or interview, because I've always wanted to be open on this channel and genuine. So I'm definitely no stranger to that meditation on the 4 elements becoming the 5th when it comes to smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely pondered that point before. So was there anything else about the last year that you wanted to mention?
So let me think here. Well, no. So I think that we covered every. Oh well, I have I think we brushed on that I've started, well, for a while I've been studying etymology.
Mm.
But basically I've recently really been digging into some different things with it. And really interesting stuff, like I feel like every sorcerer should be wanting to find out the meanings of words behind the dictionary definition, the historical meanings. And
Mm.
it's so neat to find out how like it can go back, like the like north, for example, means like it's something like down or the ground or something like that. And south actually means like the zenith or the sun at noon. And it's
Huh.
like and it's like that's so bizarre because on our maps a lot of people are seeing north up and south down when
Mm.
in reality they have the etymology of the words were different. And then you think, well,
That's
why would that be? And then
mm.
I was wondering about it. And then I got to thinking, and it dawned on me. It's like, okay, if it's noon, for example, and you face south, the sun will always be in the southern sector. It never even at its peak, it never is truly directly above us.
Interesting because of the axis, the 23.5 degree tilt. That's
Exactly.
interesting.
Exactly. And so it's in the south that the sun that it's the sun's arc is at. And if you face the north, you're going to see the ground.
Hmm.
Um
That is
so
very interesting.
yeah, cuz and I was like thinking, that's actually a really efficient, very rudimentary navigational sort of
Well,
sort of
do you know what
device.
else? In a lot of traditions, the direction of north relates to the element of earth, and the direction south relates to the element of fire. So that's
Yep,
kind of interesting.
I feel that. Yeah, yeah, and that is another excellent aspect of it as well. Mm-hmm.
All right. So what's next for you? I know plans are always subject to change, but from where you sit now, what are your plans for the next year?
Okay, so it's a lot. Okay, so first off, I am right now working on a uh I'm working on a book that is essentially compiling different uh, uh, some of the best short works that humanity has ever produced from all sorts of different religions, as well as even different things by quotes, by different authors. So maybe even like a section of whatever else, kind of like taking a note from old King James, but compiling, compiling that, it's like I think it would be really interesting if people would be able to like see, you know, like all the different, like both stories that most cultures have similar as well as the stories that cultures have as different. So that way people can be like, you know, oh, I wouldn't have expected that was, what they believe in Australia, or, or something like that.
Very
uh,
cool. That's very beneficial, I think, to have a work like that.
right. Thank you. Yeah, I have, and there's other ideas with that, but we'll keep that a surprise for right now.
All right.
um,
Well,
I've been developing some new magical technology, and experimenting with kind of a form of coding, but that's about all that I'm going to be divulging about that. Um, uh, it's different. Let me see. What else? What else? What else is upcoming? So working at the trying to get figured out how to be able to actually live completely self-sufficiently in harmony with the planet. Because like with those herbs that I mentioned earlier, my whole plan with that is to use it in general to, you know, boost my own health and the health of my loved ones, as well as, you know, be able to actually live in harmony with, you know, just what naturally grows. Because it's like, you know, I've thought my whole life, you know, well, we get food from all these other places. Why is it so difficult? Well, it actually isn't. These are just delicacies from other places. Because
Absolutely, yeah. Isn't it funny how that works? And that's the funny thing that I have always noticed about magic too, is like magic seems to be related to the unknown and
right,
and mystery. So whenever there's a mystery, there's magic. So like if you had never had garlic before, you would like, what is that aroma? What is that flavor? And then you just watch
right,
them walk outside and pull some grass out of the ground that has like a little root, a little bulb on it. You know, so there's something compelling about mystery.
right.
Hmm.
Yeah, for real, for real. And the whole culinary world in general is excellent because, like, the other day I was thinking about how, you know, like the idea of a gourmet chef is a fantastic analogy for, you know, all the same attributes that is very behooving in a person who practices magic.
Any adept, that's what I love, is watching a master at work, seeing an adept, whether they're making ravioli, whether they're a blacksmith making some sort of blade, whatever. Whenever you get to see someone who is ingrained in their craft and the craft is ingrained in them, you there are certain aspects that are common.
Right. For real. For real. It always, you know, it's interesting because, like, even in things you wouldn't expect that you'd be able to find applicable wisdom to everything, you can find applicable wisdom anywhere. Like, an old friend of mine that I played Dungeons and Dragons with a few times, he was also into magic as well. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, have you ever, you know, because there's a lot of really like inspiring stuff in fantasy. So it was very interesting. You know, I was like, you know, have you ever tried like, you know, transforming one of those ideas into like a practical, like, magical
Paradigm.
technique? Some of
Yeah.
these would be great. And he's like, oh no, man, I didn't know you could do that. And I'm like, what?
Just the idea. See, I'm not very familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, but one thing that I am acutely familiar with is this idea of spell components
Right,
being verbal, somatic, or material.
right.
And when you apply that to your practice, that can do things. That can take you places.
And something that ties into that I found out just recently is like there's so many different types of spiritual communication. You could have, you know, just merely sitting at your cup 2 inches to the right means something. Of
Uh-huh.
you can consecrate damn near anything.
Mm, man. Well, I don't want to keep you all afternoon. I very much appreciate you having this discussion, opening up your life a little bit to me and everyone watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hell yeah, I really appreciate your channel, what you're doing here. I appreciate the audience. I appreciate having me on. Thank you so much, brother.
Of course, I'm sure we'll keep the dialogue going outside of these videos. So yeah,
Absolutely.
have a good rest of the week. It's almost the weekend. Have a good rest of the week, and yeah, take care. I'll see you later.
Hey, have a good one. Peace, peace.